Hello everyone, it's Jamarl Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. Hope everyone is doing alright. This video is going to be relatively short. I'm going to try to keep this video to 10 minutes. And I'm pretty sure later on there's probably going to be a response from somebody who massively disagrees, or from groups who massively disagree with me on this. I did a video the other day on Sweden. Oh, by the way, the little link at the top. If you enjoy the content and you want to support the content, meaning the show has been completely demonetized. Tomorrow, I will have a birthday bash. And tomorrow will also just so happen, coincidentally, be the day that they allow me to reapply for monetization. Great. But the birthday bash is going to be at 5 p.m. That should be a lot of fun. That is also going to be a patron appreciation. That show is going to be about 2 hours long with multiple segments throughout the show. It is going to be saved for patrons because I'm giving it to them for a thank you. I need to find a way to do this for people who contribute through PayPal, because Patron has been having certain problems with declines and so forth. And so some people have started using PayPal. I thank all of you. It's appreciated whether you get through PayPal or Patron. You guys allow this show to keep ticking along. Thank you very much. I did a show on Sweden the other day, and in that show, I made a few points, and there were people from the left in Sweden that massively disagreed with me on those points. Their case, and you can look at the video, but ultimately what it boils down to, I said, well, let me give their disagreements first. Their main point, and because my main case was that it is a good thing that Sweden was assisting the immigrants and letting them into the country. Sweden, however, has let in a large number of immigrants, more than any other country. And Sweden is the size of a state. If it's even that big, I mean, the United States is like 50 times more. It's more than 50 times the size of Sweden. So my point was the carrying capacity of Sweden is the thing that matters. That yes, Sweden should assist. Sweden should assist to the degree that it can assist, just like all of those countries, just like all of us should assist. But you get to the secondary question of what is the carrying capacity, where it becomes too much, where the amount that you can assist puts too much emphasis or too much pressure on the country itself, or that the country itself was ill prepared to deal with the numbers that it was accepting. My point to Sweden was, if you've gotten to the point where you're at that point, either from a political context or from an actuality context, you need to attend to your affairs. That was my major point. I'm going to expand upon it because I want to be very clear on what I mean by that, because I don't want to, oh my God, Jamarl is using right wing. Nothing like that. I think my argument is logical, and I'm going to make it, again, because I think it's a logical argument. And if I miss something in the argument, you can pick it apart from the standpoint of the logic of the argument. The main critiques of me in that was you're using right-wing talking points, that the rape allegations or the rape cases, the spike in rapes, could not necessarily entirely be attributed to the immigrants, that the no-go zones is a right-wing talking point, and that they maybe aren't as bad as people are saying they are. Those are the main critiques. I don't think those critiques hold water. And let me explain. There is a monster at your door. Do you understand that? And this is a come to Jesus moment from the left. I process the world from living in the United States. There are over 300 million people that live in the United States. I consider myself further to the left than most because any of the political leaders that you push up, I'm probably further to the left than them. I am the person, if you look at my older videos, talking about getting rid of cash altogether. That our world and our society would be far better off if cash wasn't a part of the process, or if the profit motive that we have built into our system wasn't a part of the process. So understand where I'm coming from here. I'm further to the left than most. I own that. That said, we are living in a capitalistic system. And in this capitalistic system, there's certain political realities that I and lefties need to be aware of if you're going to pursue your own affairs and if you're going to push the country to that lefty way. Meaning if you're going to move the country to the left, then you need to make sure that the people are on board with you. And if not, you're living in a democracy, or let's say a representative government, which means that there can be monsters that people put in office Not because the people want those monsters in the absolute sense, but because they're not getting what they want from what they consider to be the left. I'm telling you this. Don't take my word for it. The second place, the person who's going to come in second place, that's assuming that the polls aren't wrong. The polls were wrong in Florida. That's assuming that the polls aren't wrong. If the polls aren't wrong, however, what you're going to get in Sweden for second place is an anti-immigration, Eurosceptic party. A party that used to be Nazis. That's what you're going to get in Sweden. This isn't me saying it. This is what your polling is indicating. Now, you may say that Jamarl is using right-wing talking points, but whether I'm using them or not, you have two problems. One problem, potentially two problems. If I'm wrong, meaning if the stuff that I put at the bottom of my video is wrong, whether you're talking about polling, whether you're talking about the amount of rapes, whether you want to talk about the no-go zones, if all of that stuff is wrong, then you have two problems. You have one problem. If it's not wrong, then you have two. One is politics or political. If you're right, and all of that stuff is just right-wing talking points made out of whole cloth, the right wing just made it up, the media just ran with it, and the majority of the population, because understand, the Swedish population at this point, the number one item that they wanted to talk about was immigration. That's not me saying it. That's your own country saying it. We have a country of 300 million people, meaning the United States. 50 states. We don't have an immigration problem in the United States. So the perspective that I take in the United States realizes that we don't have an immigration problem, and that the right-wingers who are using this is using this because they represent the 1% and they need to find any and everything that they could talk about as opposed to dealing with the realities of our society. Because if you deal with the realities of our society, you're going to go against the 1%, the people who they've given their lives to and who they full well believe or essentially should run the society and everything else. But that's not your issue in Sweden. You actually have a situation where you've taken in more immigrants. And then with 300 million people, you'd imagine we're the richest country on the planet. The United States has immense resources. The irony of it is, to some degree, we're responsible for the disarray that Europe has been in with the number of refugees that's been fleeing into the country because the West has been destroying countries left and right and setting them afire, and those people have been running from the fire as sensible, logical people do. People are running from war zones. You don't say. My issue is this. Countries have carrying capacities. What is the carrying capacity of Sweden? Meaning, what is the degree that Sweden has from the public resources that Sweden has, this kind of, this level of balance, this equilibrium that Sweden has in order to deal with its affairs, medical, education, all of these things. This ability to take people on and assist the people that it takes on in a way that doesn't adversely affect the country itself. What is that number? I don't know what that number is. But you would imagine if the society itself believes it's hitting that number, that society is going to push back on that. And you're going to get a certain group of people in that society that flee to places that, let's say, where monsters lurk. Especially if the left wing in the country is ideologically bent to not responding to the issues associated with immigration. It's same is true in the United States. The only difference is in the United States, it's not an issue. In Sweden, however, it may actually be an issue. The left cannot be ideologically dead on issues like this. Meaning you can't turn a tin ear to people who are saying, we have a problem. The person may not have an issue, but the closer that person is to areas that that person deems to be somewhat dangerous or risque, or these quote-unquote no-go zones, those people are not crazy in the least for saying we need to do something about immigration. Not that they're all into this thing of the Nazis or onto this bandwagon of the right-wingers, but that the left is not giving them anything to deal with the issue. Planets, countries, cities have carrying capacities, meaning they're the level to which the services and the people can tolerate intrusion. The United States is a multicultural country. We have people from all sorts, from California to Richmond, all stripes, all colors, and we, for the most part, are a melting pot. I don't think the same is true for Sweden. It is a good thing that you guys are allowing people into the country. But if you hit the point where you are no longer capable of integrating those people into a country in a way that wouldn't allow ghettos and wouldn't allow these kind of problem spots, then you are bringing people in for good reasons. So don't misunderstand me. But those good reasons doesn't necessarily mean the good will actually follow those good reasons. And yeah, you may have difficulty integrating people who are coming from a war zone. I don't think any of that stuff is insane. I think all of that stuff is as logical as possible. A lot of people are coming from various countries into Sweden. It's taken in more than any other state per capita. I mean, Germany is taking it like, but per capita. And they settle into various areas, kind of like ghettos. What do you think the ghettos look like in the United States? You have a bunch of people who are sitting in a particular area who are somewhat isolated in the society to which they are in. When they got into Sweden, it wasn't a situation where they said that I'm absolving myself of my religion or I'm absolving myself of whatever I'm doing. The overwhelming majority of people that are coming into the country are just want to get away. Overwhelming. But from a logical standpoint, certainly, there will be a percentage that's not that way. The left, to some degree, pretends as if that percentage doesn't exist. It does so for political reasons because it doesn't want the right wing making hay out of a small percentage of people when the overwhelming majority of the people that come into the country doing so because they want to escape bad ends. The left needs to stop pretending that the 5% or whatever that percentage is doesn't exist. Because I guarantee you the rest of your society is fully aware that it exists. And part of the reason that you're going to take a kicking in the teeth in this election that's coming up is because you completely ignore it. There is an ideological tenor from the standpoint of the left towards issues of immigration. In some countries, it's a non-issue. But if you're in Sweden and you've allowed this many people into the country, again, for good reasons, don't misunderstand me. This is not a right-wing argument of let these people go. This is more of an argument of your country needs to be able to accommodate the people that are coming into the country, or otherwise there's going to be chaos. And the people who are in that country, who are Swedish citizens, are not insane or wrong or crazy if they're living in areas and they're saying, oh my God, this is a problem. The question is the left going to give any level of response to the fact that that's a problem? I'm not saying you kick the people out of the country. I'm saying, are you going to do something and deal with the issue of integration of people who are coming from various war zones and places that are not necessarily the best places on the planet? That's my only point. My goal wasn't to kick people out. My goal was that, was my point in this was, it makes all the sense in the world that if you're bringing people into the country, there's going to be some people, most, perfectly fine. But you will get a percentage of assholes. If the left ignores that percentage of assholes, the right will make hay of the fact that the left is ignoring it. And if it's a situation where there are large zones of those that have aggregated together, the left will suffer. I'm trying to get across to you in the gentlest way that I possibly can that the left not having an option in Sweden, meaning not being something in Sweden for people who are economically on the left, allows the right a way in. And it should have been understood that the very act of allowing a large number of people into the country was going to create a backlash, just naturally backlash of a pendulum of people who aren't necessarily on board with it, who are motivated for it. And I'm not necessarily saying you should not allow people into the country and acknowledge those people. I'm saying that the left needs to come up with a better answer than this is just economics, and if the economic situation was better, then the world would be great. That's what one of them said. Yes, it may be economics from the standpoint of people wanting a better life, and having immigrants come into the country brings them to this point of, oh my God, are these people going to take my jobs and that type of stuff. Yeah, it does animate certain people for their own needs. But from the standpoint of the left, if you don't entertain that, and if you don't deal with that in an honest and real way without necessarily going immediately to, if economy was better, these people wouldn't be bitching this much, you're going to lose those people. You've been warned. And it's not even being warned. These guys are going to come in second place in Sweden. That's assuming that the polls hold out. It may just be like the cat that was in Florida and these guys actually took it over, meaning a monster who was part of the neo-Nazis at one point, being in charge of essentially Prime Minister of Sweden. So I just want to be very clear. My argument here was for not, it's not against immigration. My argument here is, what is the level of immigration that a particular country can bear? And if you're not dealing with it appropriately from the standpoint of being able to get the people integrated into your society, you're going to have troubles. And by the way, I am pro-immigration. I am against ICE. They should defund ICE. I think to some degree this has become the Gestapo force of Donald Trump. That's hyperbolic, but I think these guys are not necessarily been for the betterment. But we're not talking about the United States. We're talking about Sweden. And the United States hasn't had a massive, massive influx of refugees coming into the country. Sweden has. You are facing a backlash that is natural, and natural can be, and that was absolutely foreseeable. It was foreseeable. Of course it was going to take place. It's not that I agree with the right-wingers in this. I don't live in Sweden. But by the same token, I do, from the standpoint of the left, acknowledge that it's a representative government and I have to pay attention to the people in the society if those people are flipping out and pissed off and saying it's economics, and when the economic situation changes, that these people will be... That may be true, but that doesn't necessarily solve the issues of the people in the moment. The United States could do way more. Yes, we could, seeing as we were responsible. The United States could do way more for immigrants from the Middle East than Sweden and not take a single extra immigrant. In our wars, the military funding, that region becomes 100% renewable. By the way, there's another point to this. You taking in refugees is not the end all by itself, because that's not really going to solve the issue. Sweden is like the size of Kentucky. Sweden, being the size of Kentucky, in no way is possible of mitigating what is taking place from the standpoint of the migrant crisis. The wars that are propagating this, the wars that are fueling this, Sweden is incapable of doing this. If the left is not paying attention to the citizens of Sweden as the citizens of Sweden balk at this, then the left will lose. This has nothing to do with what I want, by the way. This has everything to do with what representative government is. If your country is taking a different tact, either you need a different argument to make to those people, or you need to deal with what may actually be a real issue. So, this video has gone way too long. But I hope that makes sense. I am all for immigration. And being in the United States, yeah, I am far to the left on this stuff. Because I realize, richest country on the planet. We have all sorts of resources at our disposal. But it's the same thing true for Sweden. And if the answer is no, then the left needs to take a hard look in the mirror and ask itself questions about what can it tolerate. From a humanitarian standpoint, I agree. But you have a country that's about to put a monster in second place. Maybe you need to reevaluate either your argument or your political stance. It's not that I like it. Don't misunderstand me. It is, however, an acknowledgement that the people of your country, they don't like what's taking place. So, I'll leave it. Clyde Illusion, Jamarl, quit monkeying around. I just watched your Gillum video. The establishment uses race as a tool to divide class. Yeah, they do. But Gardner didn't think that was an issue of race, and he didn't think that the monkey thing was a political thing. He thought that was just an accident. I'm fucking with you, Gardner. All right, I'm gonna leave this. I gotta be honest, this video has been way too long. I don't like this video, but I do think it gets across what my point. The position is not fully necessarily mine. The position is me looking at what Sweden is saying on this. And if you look at the main issues that Sweden is talking about or bringing up in this election, one of the main issues has to do with immigration. That's the top of the line of the issues that Sweden wants to talk about and wants to deal with. The left is ideologically weird in a way on immigration, because it always looks at it through the lens of an open border. not completely open border, but from the standpoint, in comparison to the right, where the right wing looks at this stuff being more xenophobic. The other weird part to this is that the left, because the right looks at it that way, the right is going to castigate it in a particular way, meaning the left has the kind of, that's kind of besides the point. I guess my point is there's an ideological blind spot here that I think the left is enduring. I'm sorry, I do. I don't think this is an absolute. I don't think that way about the United States. But I don't live in Sweden, so I don't have the capacity to walk around the various zones of Sweden and see how bad or how good it is. When I look at content, and the content is showing multiple people being attacked in various areas, when I hear the cops saying that, oh my God, the rapes, we can't keep up. When I look at the numbers to see that there's been a sharp increase in rapes after immigration, when I look at the size of Sweden in comparison to the number of immigrants that came into the country, and when I see that many of those immigrants were settling into similar areas where they were essentially reestablishing some of the things that they did before they came into the country, what am I supposed to take this as? Like I say, I don't live in Sweden, so I can't necessarily walk in the districts. I can only think of this from a logical standpoint of what is the carrying capacity of Sweden? And is it possible that Sweden has overloaded itself from the standpoint of what it can take on as immigrants? I understand from the right wing, you take in one immigrant and they say it's too much. Clearly, I'm not on that line. But I do ask the question of what is the level of integration that Sweden can take on at any various time? And has Sweden hit that point? That is fundamentally the question. In fact, whether that answer is yes or no is almost besides the point. What does the public think that point is? And if the left can't make a substantial argument to assuage the public that no, we haven't hit that point, or no, we're not at that point, then you're going to lose seats. My only argument here is you need to figure out whether this is an issue of politics or whether this is an issue of reality, and not doing it in a way where you're ideologically bent to immediately think that this is an issue of politics. That's all. That's all. You keep saying Sweden. If you live in Sweden, you can work in Germany. Oh, fair enough. Oh, fair enough. Because it's the European Union, you can essentially move throughout. But Sweden is still a country. You can't act like Sweden is not a country unto itself. Yes, you can have Swedes that can move and work in various places, and other people can move and work in Sweden. But we're talking about specifically Swedes going to the polls to make a choice. So Sweden is a thing unto itself. It's like saying Florida is a thing unto itself, even though it's part of the United States. If I live and I can work pretty much anywhere, I can move to any particular state to work. But Florida is still a thing. Richmond or Virginia is still a thing. They are having an election for Prime Minister of Sweden. So yeah, it's a thing. Sweden spreads propaganda against the United States enemy nations. Okay, I don't know what that means. Yes, it is, but we live in a global world now. No, we don't. I can't personally go and move and work in Sweden if I wanted to move and work in Sweden without it being a pain in the ass. Just saying. The only reason immigration is used as a battle axe for the right to blame all is. It is, Flowbug. I agree with you, but my dilemma is this, and my problem that I have my head on is this. The right wing uses this to castigate and to say, hey, the reason why you don't have that job is because that immigrant is kicking those oranges out of your hands. Because we know on the right wing you wanted to pick oranges. That's what we know. Yes, nonsense. They try to make excuses for why the rich need more money. And they're looking for anybody that they can get to vote for them, using any reason that they can get to vote for them. And so, yeah, immigration becomes one of those issues. We need to keep them immigrants out the country. Vote for me to do that. Hey, are you going to be doing other things in addition to getting those immigrants out the country? Yes, we will do everything that we can to make sure that the rich get all the ends and expropriate as much wealth as we can to the top. But hey, we will keep those immigrants out the country. Yeah, the right uses it because the right knows that if the right is honest, it could never get elected. That gives you how sad and pathetic the Democratic Party is, that these knuckle draggers have won 1,100 seats all throughout the United States. There may be a blue wave coming up. Maybe. Potentially. Never know. That's our politics. is it fair for me and is it right for me to assume that the rules that hold true in the United States hold true in Sweden also? No, it's not. I can't do that. I can't do that. That wouldn't be right. I mean, I can't apply a rule set for a country of 300 million to a country of, what, like 6 million or something. We need to keep those immigrants out the country, said Jamarl. Jamarl said no such thing. Don't spread no shit like that. Look, the reason why I'm aware of my own biases. That's what it is. I mean, I have a bias towards thinking that the right wing is full of it when they're talking about immigration. That's my bias. When I looked at the Swedish issue, my first thought was the right wingers are making this shit up for hay because they're trying to get seats. That was my original disposition. But I realized that disposition makes sense for a country of 300 million with no immigration issue. It may not make sense for a country the size of Kentucky that is bringing in hundreds of thousands of human beings. That's where I'm at. And starting from that position, I say, is it possible that the people who are complaining about this, not just the right wing, because clearly it's not just the right wing, we have the situation where these guys are going to take power, going to second place from the standpoint of the number of seats. Is it possible that they have a point? Is it possible they have a point? The same rule set doesn't necessarily apply in every country that you use the rule set to look. That was that's the way I look at this. I ask myself, is it possible that this is more true than not? I've seen a campaign where, not a campaign, but two documentaries. The first documentary went through and it was showing love and light from the standpoint of the immigration issue, which is, I honestly believe, the overwhelming majority of the immigrants that come into these countries. The same crew was brought back to see another side of this, and they were horrified. They saw for themselves. Like, this wasn't a situation of, just purely right-wing dribble. Look, all I'm saying is the left wing, we have somewhat of an ideological bias towards assisting and helping humanitarian causes, meaning we are the side that throws open the doors and say, yes, if you need our help, we're here to help you, arms open. Cash is less important than human beings. Let those people into the country and help them out. That's us. That's our natural disposition. Left to nothing else but a God addressing us at 3 a.m. What do you say? Open the borders. Let them in. Now, that's a different question, however, when the rest of your population is saying, whoa, 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 we have a problem here. If we're talking about a democratic process, like, I'm stuck in this kind of this quagmire of sorts of what I want, and I suspect the people who are criticizing me on this, what they want versus what the people of the country want. I'm sorry, the people of the country are going to hold sway. The people of the country are going to hold sway. And again, there's a monster at your door. And to some degree, the monster at your door is because the left is not dealing with those issues in a way that the public deems, I guess you can say, not necessarily necessary. Necessary is wrong, but not sufficiently dealing with it, or not sufficiently making the argument to say that it's not as much of a problem as the right wing is saying. I guess my point is, either you're losing the argument of optics, or there's a real problem. I don't live in Sweden. There's no way. It is impossible for me to know which one of those things are. When my wife and I visit Sweden, we'll go to one of these no-go zones and I'll get assaulted on camera. We can see if it's real. But up to this point, I am stuck with the logic argument of, is it possible that Sweden has overstepped its bounds in regards to the number of people that it can take on and integrate in a particular time? It's possible, yeah. It's possible. And whether it's possible or not, is it absolutely true that the left is not making a sufficient argument for the people in Sweden that is adequate, where they won't necessarily put in these right-wing potential monsters into these seats? You're not making the argument, man. You're not making the argument. Be interested in any links noted diff, but just some sites would be good. More information. I'll put the links at the bottom for some of the videos that I was looking at the other day and that I mentioned. When we go there, I would be able to get a little bit more context. It's very rare that someone hits me from the left. Very rare. That's very rare. But I don't think my argument is wrong. I think the logic of the argument is true. But again, if I am wrong on this, fair enough. If I'm wrong on this, it's just, you know, just wrong out of honesty, not wrong out of not wanting people into the country. Otter Sir Rod and JT, we know you don't live in Sweden, Syria, or Iraq, but can research it. Yeah. Well, those are slightly different. So let me explain what I mean by they're different. The reporting on the war zones, I can look at all sorts of websites. I can look at sites on the people we are invading, meaning news sites from the country, from the home countries themselves, and I can compare those to what's taking place here in our media versus BBC and these other sites. So I can get Al Jazeera, RT, the Syrian network when it's talking about that stuff. I can get what's taking place from like CNN. Like I can get all of these, like a cornucopia of sources looking at the exact same story. And of that, you can say, okay, these are the items that everybody agree on and most likely to be true. This one isn't different. This is issue of politics to some degree. There may be a reality underlying this, but a lot of this is politics. What can you make the argument to the public to try to get the public on your side? And what I've seen from the standpoint of the political space and from a party standpoint, the Swedish Democrats are ultimately, they're focusing on a very specific issue, immigration, because they know that that specific issue may be able to get them into power. The left, if they are paying attention, would deal with that, as opposed to making the cerebral argument about economics. That's all. My point to this is, if you see them doing this, and this is their issue, and this is their one issue pony, take that issue away from them. Yeah, you may have to be less hawkish on issues of immigration. Yeah, you may have to actually pull back on what you personally want to do. But it is a democracy after all. It is a democracy. It's not that everything comes out in democracy is what you want. But there is a monster at the door. What are you going to do to keep that monster out of office? You guys just put a hopes that those polls are not wrong and this guy actually takes office. That's my point. Our policies in the Middle East were born in Central and South America. We tried to bring the model over there. It isn't working. Yeah, it fell apart big time, Garden. All right. I'm going to end this here. Build a wall around Trump. 2 times. Jamal, be good at look at. What? Be good to look at Garden Gnome's request for redress. What do you mean, Garden Gnome's request for redress? I don't know what you mean. I don't know what you mean, my man. Oh, it isn't easy, and I think that's Jamal's point. Yeah. Again, the best solution is to find ways to stabilize nations, yes. And people feeling, yes. Same thing, you know, yes. Garnham, yeah, agreed. Agreed. Jamal's wearing a dress won't help anything. No. My point is, Sweden is a tiny, tiny country. It is good that Sweden is bringing people in, but let's be honest that the issue here is not necessarily the number of people Sweden can bring in. It's setting countries on fire and having those people to run away from those countries. It makes all the sense in the world that if you blow a country up and if you're bombing the shit out of the country, that there are going to be people who say, I don't want to be around for the bombings. They leave. Now, if you're doing stuff that's causing a mass exodus of human beings and those people are ending up in Europe, then if you, maybe the way to start this or to deal with the situation is to stop the bombings. Sweden is in no position at all to essentially stop this. So it feels from the humanitarian standpoint, it lets people in. The problem is Sweden could never allow the number of people to be into the country that it needs to stop it, nor is Sweden in a position to stop the bombings and the killings that is propagating those people fleeing out the country. It is a decrepit solution to a problem that doesn't have an answer from the standpoint of Sweden. It's just doing what it can in a humanitarian way. You have to build up those countries in the same way we did from the standpoint of a Marshall Plan. That's off the table, however. That's off the table. Whether you want to say that people are somewhat racist and don't necessarily want to do this for Muslims and Arabs, whether you want to say that's just not in the cards from our standpoint of this kind of economic security stuff, whatever you want to say is our reason for it. A Marshall Plan would be the thing. Look, if you want to stop people from fleeing into your countries, stop bombing those countries. I mean, that's the long end of it. Swedes have a relatively diverse physical traditional population mix. It's understandable they're interested in preserving it to a degree. I don't know if it really has been threatened, though. I don't know either, Winslow. Whether I think it's been threatened or not, there seems to be a section of the population that believing it is. Swedes got refugees. Was 2015, the numbers are now, yeah. So each year afterwards, they've started cutting down on the number of refugees that were into the country. Well, you know what I'm learning? One of the things I'm learning is that the effects that something have is not immediate. I've realized that when something takes place in a political space, that the consequences of those things are often drawn out and are consequential later on. Like think for the moment of the election, Clinton and Sanders. That has had dramatic repercussions that have taken place that have gone far beyond just the 2016 primaries. I mean, you have all of these people who decided that the Democratic Party wasn't where they wanted to be and left. You have another section of people who said, we want to change the party, and they went to this idea of trying to reinsole the party. Whether you think it works or not is besides the point. That's what they wanted to do. You have another group of people who looked at the political space from the standpoint of the right, and I don't see the difference between them and the others, but they've created a difference in themselves, and that group has been anti-war. That group has been online and has dovetailed with the anti-establishment left in some issues, dealing with, let's say, censorship and dealing with issues of war. The political space is changing. There's been this, seems to be a shift in ideologies of the people in our country that hasn't necessarily affected the power structure yet, at least from the standpoint of these people losing their positions. But the groundswell seems to be there. It's fucking phenomenal and fascinating to watch. I don't know what's going to happen in this election in Sweden, but immigration seems to be one of the top issues. Look, if I'm wrong in my analysis on this, fair enough. Fair enough. All right, I'm going to leave this. What? Jamarl is going full 1488. I have no idea what that means. Everyday Progressive Show. Otter, nice jokes, man. I don't know what that joke means. Jamarl is going full 14/88. Play Otter sees like jokes. I don't know what that means. I don't know what that means. Europeans have no problem buying property in Dubai and move over there. Well, that's assuming they have the money to do so. And I would imagine that all Europeans don't have the purchasing power that we think. Look, to some degree, that brings up one of the issues that these guys are having, meaning income inequality, even in Sweden. Even in Sweden. The only videos referencing Swedish videos debunking the narratives are debunking the Bowen debunkers. Mark P. Oh, 14/88 equals Nazis. Oh, shit. Yeah, I didn't know what that means. I don't know the reference to that one. Yeah, I don't know the reference to that one. I get to look that one up. 14/88 is an Aryan nation. No fucking way. That's, yeah, I didn't know that. I didn't know that. Are you serious? I didn't know that. Thank you, Everyday Progressive. Good looking out. I'll know that from here on out. Otter, yeah, that's funny, Otter. I didn't know that. I didn't know that. I didn't know that. That's fucked up. Yeah, not so much. Sweden is a capital with a strong social system. Yes, they are. They're saying their social system is being taxed. They're saying it's being taxed. Risley Lee, my point is that If there's peace in the Middle East, Europeans are welcome to enjoy and even live. Yeah, Grizzly Lee. But the thing is, the wild part about it is being a vassal state of the United States has adversely affected Europe, not helped them. Europe is the one that's taking the brunt of the United States destroying the Middle East. They're the ones that are taking the refugees. They're the ones that are having to pay for this stuff. The United States destroys it. Europe picks up the slack within regards to the refugees. Europe continues to do it, though. They continue to do it. All right, I'm going to end this. Yeah, I'm going to end this. This is going way too long. And like I said, I told my wife 10 minutes. Beautiful. Yeah. So I'm going to end this here. Super chat at Beltesar. What? The other one showed up. I think if you hit it, it'll show. Red trickle. I wouldn't be surprised if they have a red trickle in 2018. Not only does it prove the hypothesis that they'd rather lose to a Republican rather than win to a progressive, but it proves that the United States has kidney failure. What? You're trying to say they're peeing blood? The U.S. could do more. The United States could do way more for immigrants. Yeah, I read that one. The red trickle. That's funny. They're trying to say the Democratic Party has kidney failure and they're peeing blood. That's hilarious. That's hilarious. I don't know, man. If that would be amazing, right? If instead of the Democratic Party taking seats, if they lose seats, oh God, that would be amazing. That would be amazing. If we come out of this election in 2018 and we have a situation where Donald Trump and the people that he pushes and everything else actually picks up seats as opposed to what looks like it's going to be a wipeout, that would be mind-blowing. That would be mind-blowing. I'm trying to understand this point. What point? Bob, U.S. and the EU immigration is apples and oranges. Yeah, that's my point. They're apples and oranges. She's used to lying. Oh, I know, right? I know. She's used to lying to her JT on this issue, yeah, unfortunately. So the EU's immigration is bad, U.S. immigration is good. No, that's not my point. Yeah, that's not my point, Bob. No, that's not my point, Bob. I'm making the point that the United States is a country of 300 million people that's a complete melting pot. And that a few people coming into the country from the United States is not the same thing as people coming into a country the size of Sweden. That's my point. That comparing immigration in the United States and immigration system in Sweden are apples and oranges. Sweden is taking a boatload of immigrants, hundreds of thousands, in a population that's the size of something like Kentucky. I think there's like 6 million people in Sweden, or 9 million people in Sweden. The United States is more than 50 times the size of Sweden, is easily capable of taking in people into the country. And even though our military has been bombing and blowing shit up to the point of creating the immigration issue in Europe, we're not taking nearly any. That's my point. My point is that there's a difference in talking about immigration from the standpoint of Sweden and talking about immigration from the standpoint of the United States. And I can't use the same ideological viewpoint in the way that I look at one as opposed to looking at the other. That's my point. Chunks of races. Trina be fine, yeah. A melting pot with chunks of races. Oh, that's fucking hilarious. We have a far larger immigrant level than Sweden. Yeah, but we have 300 million people. This is a massive country, Bob. This is a massive country. All right, I'm going to end this because this is saying that I'm getting weird reception issues. And we have a thunderstorm that's brewing here in Richmond. Our temperatures has been hitting 100 degrees, nearly 100 every day. It's been in the 90s every day. We have a thunderstorm brewing. So I'm going to end this here. That is a beautiful backdrop, Jamal. Thank you. Immigration to Sweden and most of the EU is heavy with Muslim fundamentalists. Yeah. Bob, there are too many differences to make a comparison. Yeah, I think those things are different. I think those things are dramatically different, Bob. I really think they are. The U.S. looks more like a frying pan with Mahouv's prison system and all. Yeah, let it rain. Yeah, let it rain is fine, but, thunderstorms shake the house. All right, I'm going to end this. Remember, guys, I'm going to have the birthday bash tomorrow. That should be a lot of fun. I may do another one tonight just to see if I can find a decent show to talk about. This one has gone massively long, and I think probably in the weeds. And I hope that the people who heard my original thing on Sweden gets my viewpoint on this. I'm not against Swedish immigration. I love the fact that Sweden let those people in. I think it's a mark of the evolved nature of the Swedes to say we're going to let people in for humanitarian reasons, not because we're going to get anything out of it, purely because we want to help. Yes, you're remarkable fucking human beings. Just because you're remarkable fucking human beings doesn't mean all of this is going to go spittingly well. There will be consequences to doing things like this. Part of the reason why I consider you to be remarkable human beings is because there will be a consequence. If you were going to get something out of this, I would think less so. But in this, some of these people who are coming over have been living in hellish situations. And the idea that hellish situations make beautiful people, I think, is somewhat of a misnomer. I like the fact that Sweden did this. I think it's a good thing. I think more countries should do it. I think the United States should be more involved in allowing people into the country for humanitarian reasons, especially since we, in many respects, was the reason that those people were fleeing those war zones as refugees in the first place. But that doesn't mean that you can ignore the political situation of the people in your country who may disagree with you and who are flipping out and freaking out about the number of immigrants that are coming into the country, be it optics, meaning politics, or in reality. And the number one issue on the ballot today is Sweden. Is immigration. Either you ignore those people or you respond to those people. If you ignore those people, you ignore them at your own peril. And reconnection is successful. Great. Look, I don't think I said that Europe is overloaded with fundamentalist Muslims. Okay, at least I don't think I said that. I think I've been consistent on this. At least I hope I have. The overwhelming majority of people coming into the country are just decent people trying to get away from a war zone. I think that number, if I had to give an estimate, was probably like 90-something%. But let's be honest. Come on, let's be honest. Are you really believing and making the argument that 100% of the people coming over as refugees are innocent doves? And if you are making that argument, I would pose to you that this is part of the reason that the right gains on the left in issues of immigration. It's like ignoring reality. Just from a logic standpoint, just from law of averages, there will be a percentage of people who come into the country that are not for the best ends. Now, I don't know what that number is, but let's be honest and let's acknowledge that there will be a percentage of people that fit what we would consider to be a fundamentalist Muslim. Now, that doesn't mean that all of them are, by no stretch. But you will get a percentage. That's all I'm saying. I don't have this belief that, Europe is overrun with Muslims. I think that's nonsense. But a small percentage, of course. Of course. Let's see. NATO, the Rotten Tomatoes. That's funny. NATO, I'm sorry. NATO was supposed to go bust when the Soviet Union went bust. It's looking for a reason to exist. The flag is all about, we got Patriot Act, Freedom Act, Liberty Act, NDAA, all strip away basic U.S. constitutional rights, and people are okay with that. Agreed. The EU and U.S. policies are a big part of the problem, Bob. Yes, they are. If you're bombing and killing people in various countries. NATO put up a phony thing saying that they were just trying to protect the people in Libya. NATO used that in order to commit or change to Gaddafi government, Gaddafi regime. You can buy a slave in Libya right now. That was NATO's action. That was NATO's work. NATO went in and completely and utterly destroyed a country to the point where you have gangs. I have a story right here, right now, that I was going to do dealing with Libya, talking about the gangs that was released based on what NATO did in Libya. That was NATO's action. That was NATO intervening. Not saying Gaddafi was fucking awesome, but they weren't selling slaves. The people who were fleeing Libya were fleeing it as a direct result of what Gaddafi was, what NATO did in that country. Yeah, it is the policies of Western countries that to some degree is instigating the flood of refugees into Europe. So yeah. Jamal, do a video on the new NAFTA. I saw that. I haven't read the agreement yet, J. Scott. I haven't read the agreement yet. I'll check it out though. If people were rich and prosperous, it'd be less a problem. Yes, agreed. But Sweden has been cutting taxes and getting relatively neoliberal for 30 years now. Yes, immigration issues just in time. Yes, yes, yes. Immigration, believe it or not, it's not an issue about immigrants coming into the country. Immigration is an issue about jobs. What I mean by that is when people have this thing of increase in inequality or this idea that their life is getting harder, that things are costing more expensive, those people get pretty adamant about protecting their own. And with this thing of immigration, are these people who are coming into the country at some point going to take my jobs? This immigration is not an issue about immigration. It's more so an issue of economics. If you have what's considered the left, and the left has been instigating neoliberal policies, so those neoliberal policies have been making people's lives more difficult, more harsher, more harder, the wages not going up, the life getting more expensive, then yeah, immigration at that point becomes an issue because, oh my God, they're allowing these people into the country. They're going to use up resources. They're going to take away our jobs at some point. They're using our medical facilities. They're using our education. Oh my God. You understand that the outrage that these people are experiencing may just be in their heads. But part of the reason that makes this worse is that if their living situation is worse. I was talking to my wife today. I made the point to her, if everybody had a ton of cash, nobody would give two shits about immigration. Immigration becomes more of an issue. The right gets more bang for its buck in immigration when the situation gets harder. What the Democratic Party hasn't realized, at least I don't think they have, and maybe they haven't necessarily cared, is that the right is emboldened in situations of economic stress. That sounds odd, but the answer is, to some degree, is true. I mean, both sides get emboldened. But if you have a Democratic Party that is not necessarily doing anything real from an economic standpoint, let's just say the basic mainstay that is the Democratic Party, not the people who are on the main left. And the right wing says it's those immigrants that are coming into the country. And you have a Democratic Party that is feckless, but is also trending in this thing about getting rid of ICE. Then what people hear is they're trying to open the borders. They don't hear the fine-tuned conversation that's taking place. They hear open borders, and they hear this in the context of economic stress, where their healthcare has gotten more expensive, where their education has got more expensive, where their wages haven't gone anywhere. And now you're talking about open the goddamn borders. The argument that the right wing makes on this has less to do with people coming into the country and more to do with economics. They play the bottom against itself. They do this. When Democrats allow Republicans to move on with this, when Democrats don't challenge Republicans in a real way with economic policies, kind of like on Ocasio or even Gullum, he's putting all of these left-wing things on the ballot, then you've effectively neutered yourself to some degree and having a real argument, because now this argument about immigration leaves you with your pants off. It leaves you with your pants down. Yeah, as Swedes' lives get harder, the immigration issue becomes more of an issue. Again, the question becomes, is this an issue of politics, meaning optics, or is this reality where Sweden is hitting its carrying capacity? And maybe I shouldn't say carrying capacity. Maybe I should say the capacity or the speed at which they can integrate somebody into their particular society. Have they hit that level of integration? I don't know. I don't know. But I don't take this as from an authority on this. Spread open the border. Look, don't take my word for it. Look at the polling. If you look at the polling in the United States about getting rid of ICE, if you say Medicare for all, polling is like 60-70%. Education, meaning open schools or debt-free schools, again, 50-60%. You get to ICE and abolish ICE, the number drops. The number drops. Like that argument goes like falls so flat that needs to be retooled. That needs. But whatever. I appreciate the fact that people say it and they mean it. When I say it, I want to abolish them because I don't think they need to be there. But purely from a political and an optic standpoint, most Americans don't know that ICE didn't exist until the Patriot Act. Most Americans think that that means open borders. Most Americans are not aware of historical information. So this idea of abolish ICE comes across to them as we're just opening the borders. And that's in a country without an immigration issue. That's one country without one. I poorly put a point. Many, of course, are influenced by Saudi Wahhabist teaching. Yeah, agree. Agree. The fact that mass immigration does, in fact, impact lower classes, the left has to stop ignoring this as well. Immigrants do not take jobs and can reshape local communities. Do take jobs and can reshape local communities. Yeah. Yeah. Where would Jamarl prefer we subscribe and donate, Patreon or PayPal? Either one, Kate. Either one. If you can do Patreon, have at it. If you can't do Patreon, PayPal is okay. I say Patreon only because I put in content in Patreon. But I'm going to find a way to allow that content to be shown to people who are giving through PayPal or Patreon. I just need to figure out how. Either one, though. Either one is appreciated. Yeah, some of these are Patreon problems. But either one is fine. What did I poorly put? Because I want to correct it if I fucked up. Yeah, the Wahhabi does. Yes, they set up shop and they spread that stuff. Saudis. What did I fuck up? What did I fuck up? Yes, these politics are rooted in economics. Yes, Tim Flowbug. How about Lee Stranahan's view on this? I haven't seen Lee Stranahan's view on this. When a lot of people work with dark histories are happy. I mean, Lee Stranahan is a right winger. I would imagine that he's more so on the right on this stuff about keeping immigrants out. My point, Jamal, agreed with the statement in the chat earlier that Europe was flooded with Muslim extremists. Oh, I see. That is not the case, and he has to be more cautious about dipping the chat. Ah, fair enough. Fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah. I don't think they're I don't think Europe is flooded with Wahhabis. I do think Saudi Arabia spreads that shit around. And I also think that people coming over, there will be a small percentage. But the left, and my point in all of this, was that the left ignores this. And I say they ignore it at their own peril. And that's not even the terrorist stuff, the Wahhabist stuff. I'm talking more so about immigrants reshaping communities. The left ignores it. I guarantee you, you may ignore it from an ideological standpoint. Your population is not. Your population is not. So let's see. All right, and this will be the last one. I've been doing this show all day, so. French socialists. Hey Jamal, how about creating a cooperative with Jimmy Dore, Abby Martin, Jordan Sheridan, and true leftist independent journalists and commentators? Together, you'd be less vulnerable to demonetization and censorship. I would love to do that. I only have 14,000 subscribers. I don't say that as a negative. I just say that from a true-false standpoint, not necessarily a good-bad standpoint. Jimmy Dore has like 300,000 subscribers. I don't know if Abby Martin is on. Jordan Sheridan, I don't know what he's on, but everybody knows him from TYT, so I'm pretty sure he's going to take off pretty soon. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I love that idea. But that wouldn't be something that would be started by me. That would be something started by somebody with a little bit more clout. At least I think so. I could be wrong. This could be me creating a reality. But I'm not certain. My shop has been saying made in America by Mexicans. Oh God, that's funny. That's funny. That's funny. I guess they have too many races. Oh God, Bob. Did you see the black community in LA that went to a city council meeting and flipped out because of immigrants? I did not see that. I didn't see that. There have been more firings and closings at TYT. I have saw that. I have saw that. Yeah, I have a video on that. I got like 3 emails from people telling me about that one. So yeah, Garden, I'm gonna have a video on that one coming up. They got rid of their entertainment content. Yeah. They burned any good that will come after selling off the Hillary and DNC wing. They sold their. They got rid of, if I'm not mistaken. Well, I don't want to say it. I need to check it first. I need to reread it. All right. You all have a good night. I'm going to end this here. If you enjoy the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe. You can always support the Patreon. Thanks, guys.